we go. Fantastic. All right, that should be, I think this is working well. So it's not, I think it is. So we'll close that. Hopefully it's working. But if not, then, oh well. Just use the AI summary to help. All right, before I open this, actually, very quickly, I wanted to show you something. So where do I go here? I added an image to the slideshow from last week. Because I mentioned something, but you didn't have any kind of image to go with it. So we were talking about Ctesiphon. Remember the city that was the capital for the Sasanian, right? The third of the Persian empires that we discussed, right? So there was the Achaemenid, the Parthian, and the Sasanian or Sassanid. Sometimes it's called tomato, right? So I said Ctesiphon is still there, and I wanted to show you like what I meant when I said that. So
Oh my God,
Whoa,
I forgot about the spell.
whoa, that's crazy.
So there's the arch at the bottom, right? 4 years ago, it's still there. And right now they've got like I saw images from 2025, and it had scaffolding here because I think they were trying to repair it. It was starting to fall apart. But yeah, you can still go and visit.
Wow.
This is what it's imagined to have looked like in its heyday, right? 600 AD. Pretty within 150 years, this city was abandoned.
Wow.
Who are the people in the top?
Up there.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I don't know. I'm not actually sure, but probably it's part of the pagan Persian religion,
Okay.
right? So somebody can Google that and maybe find.
I will try right now.
Okay, fantastic. All right. So my question that makes it relevant today, you're like, why is Kirby showing you this? Well, you're going to tell me actually. So what are we talking about today? Islam. And where are we talking about today?
Middle East.
Yes. What city? What? Baghdad. Baghdad. Yeah. So we're gonna talk about Mecca, but we're gonna talk about Baghdad.
We're trying to get
This
to
is
Baghdad, right?
Ctesiphon, right? And
I'll do my best.
I'm gonna say
SETS.
within 150 years of this artist's imagining, this city was abandoned. Why? Because Baghdad was built. It was built by the Abbasid caliphs 30 kilometers to the northwest along the Tigris River.
So they're
Okay, so that's just to give you a frame of reference. You don't need two centers of economic trade, right? You don't need two hubs along the Silk Road right next to each other, right? Once Baghdad was built, everybody who lived here in Ctesiphon just moved north and joined that city. Cool? All right. So just to get, yeah, don't.
What's the distance between Ctesiphon and Baghdad?
30 kilometers.
Okay.
Yeah, so 30 kilometers is, let's see, it's like 20 miles, just over 20 miles.
Just learn the metric system.
So it's we're not, so when Kirby's in the middle of like his like hardest training block, that's a long run. That's a long run on Sunday. Yeah, 18 to 20 miles. Yeah, so you can do it in a day. Yeah, cool. Yes.
So it looked up the actual artist's re-representation
Yeah,
and said it's an interpretation of the artist of what it might have looked like.
yeah,
So those three people are just general representations of Sasanian king.
yeah, fair enough. Yeah, I didn't think that was like a real artist, like, you know, based on archaeological evidence. I thought it was just a reimagining. So this was what I thought. All right. So before I start on the lecture, I got some stuff written on the board. Before I even talk about that, I want to give you I guess, a disclosure statement, a disclaimer. Yes. So this course is the kind of course where we're going to be investigating all kinds of beliefs. Yes. We're going to interrogate pagan beliefs, we're going to interrogate Christian beliefs, we're going to interrogate Islamic beliefs, Judaism, and other things that I've left out. Fair enough? So that is to say, sometimes those interrogations will, well, they'll always follow facts, but they might seem controversial because we're taking a scientific, historical, factual, right, stance, not a faith-based stance. Everybody clear on that? Yeah? So this is all just my way of saying in your parlance, don't at me, right? If you get mad because it seems like I'm trash talking your faith. I'm not, right? I am trying to, well, let's say this. I'm going to be an equal opportunity offender. Okay. If I'm trashing one, then I'm trashing them all, even my own. But that's the job of a philosopher, right? We should be willing to subject our own beliefs to scrutiny to see if they're actually worth holding. I'm not trying to convince you. I'm not trying to change your mind. I'm definitely not trying to convert anybody in this room. Is that cool? I don't think I need to say this to the people in this room. But I didn't think I needed to say it 2 years ago either. And then somebody got up and walked out because they were mad at me. So yeah, so that's just my way of saying caveat emptor. Yes. Okay. You signed up for a class on, right, interdisciplinary cultural critical theory, right? So yeah, you get what you get for. All right. Do I have the slideshow up? I do. Fantastic. I'm going to see if I can get that weird menu out of the top right-hand corner there. Because it irritates me.
Oh.
All right. Yes, I can. Oh yeah, there we go. I just need to go. Thought it would go away. Cool. All right. Chris is coming closer.
I don't want to be on camera.
Oh. You're good.
Oh, yeah, I'm on camera.
Yeah.
I just don't want to look at my bald head the whole time.
No, that's okay. Jack, are you okay with that?
Yeah, I'm looking for.
I'm only going to have the camera on while I'm talking about this stuff here.
Oh, you're good.
Okay, cool. All right, so what are these 3 religions, these world religions that I've written at the board, at the top of the board? What are they called?
Abrahamic.
They're called the Abrahamic
Yeah.
religions. Why are they called the Abrahamic
They
religions?
stem from Abraham.
That's the story, right? Cool. I mean, that's fair enough.
No,
I'm not here to challenge it. So in many ways, these are, right, ontologically similar, these 3 faiths. They differ maybe in their theology, but ontologically, cosmologically, metaphysically, they all hang together in some important philosophical ways. What's one of those things that they have in common?
They all believe in an over God, as
Okay.
in the one true God.
Yeah, and so the phrase that we use to describe that is what?
Monotheism.
Monotheism, right? There's one God. Cool. I've written it this way not to play favorites, right? But because this is the general historical progression. The oldest of the 3 Abrahamic religions is Judaism. Right? The second oldest is Christianity, and the youngest is Islam. Cool? Fantastic. I mean, this should all be like
That actually
junior high stuff, right? This is not surprising. Yeah.
Way to make him feel good.
Wait,
So
so
after it's
sorry. Surprised you? Not surprised you?
Yeah, I'm surprised. I thought
Oh, okay.
Islam was
How
much
so?
older. I thought Islam was much older.
Oh, okay, yeah, no. 600, right, CE. Yeah. Probably you know the dates. Right, and then several hundred years earlier.
Yeah, they have Christmas, right?
Yeah, so that's the story. Yeah, okay, good. All right, that's the way it's told. Cool. So notice I have a little arrow here, right, from Neoplatonism. Why is that there, you think?
Oh,
I have theories.
well, I mean, through scholasticism, and Augustine was the first one to kind of take it and read it, say, oh, okay, well, let's make this fit better with what I'm trying to do.
I like that you're looking for a philosophical answer. I really just was talking about timeline wise, right? But you're not wrong. Anna.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, I didn't know.
But it's simple, right? Neoplatonism didn't exist when Judaism was first founded, right? That's why that arrow's there.
Yeah, that one's easier.
Yeah, as much as you were giving me a $10 answer, I just wanted a 10-cent answer, right? Yeah, so Neoplatonism, right, isn't even a thing, right, when Judaism gets off the ground, when it's getting its start. Somewhere after Christianity is birthed, if a religion can be birthed, right, that we find Neoplatonism. Plotinus's dates I gave you, right, what were they, like fourth century CE, right? So a couple of centuries after, right, the stuff that you're used to hearing about if you attended Sunday school, yeah. And then obviously Islam is, right, several hundred years after that. Cool? Right, so what did we, let's just quickly talk about what we saw with Neoplatonism. What was like their big thing? Like, give me like the back of the napkin sketch of Neoplatonism. I've given it to you a couple of times now. What's their spiel? It's also.
One new slogo site.
Okay, good, all right, so nobody wants to say that word.
Hypostates?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Hypostates.
Hypostates?
Hypostases.
Oh, it's not hypostates?
Hypostases, that's because
It's
I
hypostasy.
meant to put an S there, sorry, that's just bad spelling, right? Hypostases.
Oh, I read that, I've only seen that in the singular.
Yeah, so hypostases, what is a hypostasis?
Someone that doesn't follow the religion, an apostate.
No, that's an apostate,
Oh,
right, with an APO,
Would,
right?
aren't they like
Hmm.
archetypes?
Hupa means, right, like hyper,
oh, so maybe like a
Yeah.
saint.
right?
Close both
Yeah,
ways.
so hyperstate, basically. Yeah, the hypostases in Neoplatonism were the levels of reality. Remember I said whenever you turn something immaterial into something real, there's two words that you could use, like reification, which is a Latin term for like thingification, right? Res is the Latin for thing. So if you're reifying, you're thingifying in Latin. But the Greek word is to hypostasize, right? You are taking something that is immaterial and making it hyper real, right? Super real, like thingifying it. Got it?
Manifest?
Manifest.
Okay.
Yeah, those are just two different words of talking about the same kind of thing.
Yeah, I got lost on the language ones.
Part of the problem that we have in philosophy, like, and not just like ancient philosophy, but like 2026 philosophers, they'll take whatever like their favorite idea is and they'll treat it as if it's actually the real like situation. They think that their ideas carve nature at its joints. You probably heard that phrase before,
I
right?
haven't.
And so one of the things that philosophers like me do, because I'm a pragmatist, right? We go around to conferences and we say, hey, you know, you all are just like hypostatizing your ideas, right? You're falling in love with your ideas and thinking that that's the way reality is. But that's just one way of describing reality. Cool? You don't need to know any of that. I'm just giving you some context for why that word is up there. Cool? All right. So in Neoplatonism, there are several levels. Remember, I gave you the diagram. At the top is what?
The one.
The one, right? And the one does what? How did we describe the one?
That's not.
It emanates. That's what it does, right? It's hard to say what it is because it's ineffable, right? It can't be effed, right? It's hard. It's impossible to put into words. Plotinus and Proclus will say things like, "It resides in apophatic darkness." Right, which is like a really cool phrase. It sounds like the name of like my favorite metal band, right? Like the apophatic darkness. I mean, that's got to be like, yeah. I just imagine them like on stage going, yeah, right, throwing goats. So apophasis or apophasis, right? What is that?
Well, okay, that's a weird question. Apotheosis could be the conglomeration and destruction of everything. Or it could be like the genesis of a new thing,
Okay, kind of.
like a big bang, but I think it also refers to religious discontent. So
Let me put, well, okay, hold on a second. Right, you're running together two words. So I'm gonna put over here, right? This is the word you already used.
okay, that's what I'm confused.
Right, and apostate,
Thank you.
right?
Not there.
That's what you just talked about.
Okay.
Right? I'm talking about
Apotheosis.
apophasis.
Oh,
Right? This is why I write things down because I'm from the South and I slur my words. So people
thought
can't
you said-
understand what I'm saying. Right? Okay, good. So what
I
my
thought you said
grandpa used to say is like
apophasis.
we Southerners tend to chew on our words as we speak them, right? So I'll tell you a funny story about how Kevin Decker misunderstood a really important thing that I said to him once because of that Southern chewing of words, but that's for another time. So apophysis, that apophatic darkness, it can't be effed. Apophysis means that you can only say what something isn't. You can't say what it is, right? If I were to say, whenever somebody says, well, not to mention XYZ, and then they like mention it, right? But they're not going to talk about it, right? They're bringing that into reference through apophysis, right? Well, I'm not going to mention Aristotle, but I just did, right? Cool. Yeah, Anna.
Isn't it also kind of the state of contentment that comes from like sitting with it, or is that the other A word? No, that's aporia.
That's aporia. Yeah, that's
Sorry.
puzzling. Yeah, there's a lot of A words going on. That's why we write them down. Yeah, Owen.
And so another word for this would be the Torah, right? What we're talking about right now, the one.
Yeah, that's fine. Yeah, okay, cool. So the one, it can't be effed. It resides in apophatic darkness, whatever that means, right? But it does emanate. We can say what it does, but not what it is. It emanates. And what does it emanate, Jacob? Since you gave us that word.
Emanates news.
Nous. That's the next level, right? The next hypostases. Yeah, good, right? The next level that comes out. Nous. But also sometimes logos. And sometimes that's the way it's described. Why do you think? What's up?
Well, I wanted to ask a question about the darkness aspect. To me, it seems like, isn't it kind of odd that we assume that the can't be effed with omnipotence is like sitting in ignorance at all times?
Ooh, that's a big question that I can't answer. See this down here?
Put that in the philosophy.
See all that stuff down there? The
Yeah.
natural theology?
Sorry.
We'll wrap it up into there. Okay, cool.
Okay.
All right, so a little bit of terminology, like definitions, right? Because I realize these are Greek words that I have told you in this class, but you may not remember that I told you.
I got it.
So nous is in intellect. Mind, kind of, right? But more like intellect is a better way of saying it. Because in our culture, psyche is often translated as mind because of Sigmund Freud, right? But in Greek, they mean different things. Yeah. So nous in Greek is intellect. Psyche would be like spirit or soul, the breath of life in Greek. Yeah. Why would logos sometimes be used instead of nous by these Greek Neoplatonists? So this is, so intellect, right? Yeah, and then logos means, logic or reason, but also just word.
We require those to think, we require those to analyze the world we live in.
Yeah, so intellect is a linguistic affair, is kind of the assumption, right? That if you're able to think about the world, you're thinking about the world in sentences.
Yeah.
Yeah, cool. Do you see that? So this is why Neoplatonists would just run those two together sometimes. They didn't really think that there was a big distinction. You've got that. I'll go over here. Remember that picture that I gave you from the Neoplatonists, right? You had the one, then you had that, then you had that, then you had that, right? And so there was on the one, there was nous, right? And then there was psyche, right? Which is spirit or world spirit, the active intellect, right? And then we have the world with us, right? Humans, and then non-being is like the negation of all that stuff, right? Remember, that's the Neoplatonic picture. And all of this is like coming out of the one. It's bubbling out like a wellspring. Yeah, we're going to have to use metaphors to talk about the one because it lives in apophatic darkness, because it's ineffable. We can't say what it is, so we have to say what it's like, which is to say what it's really not.
Right.
It's not a wellspring, but it's like a wellspring in that it emanates, it gives rise, it bubbles up the rest of existence. Everybody got that? Cool. Yes, John.
One last, I promise. If it's too much, don't even answer.
Well, if it's too much, you know what I'll tell you.
Yeah.
All right.
So psyche, as it relates to the world, would that be in the same way as zeitgeist or world spirit from that one dead German guy?
Yeah, I mean the German idealists were riffing on a lot of these ideas in their own way. They were putting their own spin, their own flavor, but that's a whole nother ball of wax.
I knew it.
Cool. Phew. So then, right, I think back to my days in Catholic school and the scars that I have on my knuckles from being rapped on the hand with a ruler, because I would ask questions like, excuse me, how can three be one? Right? We would talk about the Holy Trinity. If you don't know about this because you never had the privilege of attending Catholic school, right? I'm being recorded, right? Then, right, let me try to unpack it a little bit, right? So the idea is that God the Father, this is why you always hear like Catholics, they'll do the right, the sign of the cross is what it's called, right? And they'll say, in nomine Patri et Filii et Spiritus Sancti, right? That's in the name of the Father, right? Right? The Son and the Holy Spirit. So the idea for Catholics is that this is three instantiations of one God, because now what you said about monotheism is finally like clicking, right? These are all monotheisms, and yet, right, there's an expression of like a tripartite kind of oneness in Catholicism.
They love Plato.
I mean, right?
Love Plato.
Right? Like, so I put that up there so you could kind of see this Catholic, right? I guess, taking up of the Neoplatonic ontology to make sense of the theology. And so one way, I'm just in case you aren't familiar with Catholic theology, think of it as like three ways that water can manifest. Right? So there's liquid, there's ice, there's steam. Yeah, that's
Good.
yeah, that's one metaphor that's used to help young people like me who
Yeah.
were in class going, how can three be one, right?
Yeah.
To keep them from going to the dean's office, right?
Yeah.
To keep them from having scars on their knuckles, right? And scars on their soul. No, just kidding. Okay, I'm fine. Yeah, Michael.
Like people's knuckles in the
In
air.
Florida,
I assume the eight.
In Florida.
oh no, in Florida in 2026, it's still not illegal. There are still some schools in Florida that practice.
I got
corporal
spanked in
punishment.
elementary school.
Okay, I'm
That's
sorry for
crazy.
you. All right.
Yeah.
That's how old are you?
90, 94.
Oh, God.
That's
That's not how old you are. That's when you were in school.
what it did to my soul. Aged.
All right, so hey, those of you who have studied a little Catholic, either doctrine, theology, or even just history, right? There's a clear difference, right? Like
Yeah.
that,
Uh-huh.
right? The Son, not the Word, but what was the Son often called in the New Testament?
Love Jesus.
The word
The
of
Lamb?
God.
All of those things,
Yeah, okay.
but
Could've made-
also the living Word. You ever heard that?
Yeah.
Right? Or the New Covenant.
Uh-huh.
Yeah. And so you can see how Neoplatonism is, right, kind of being taken up and made to work with, right, monotheistic religion. Is that fair enough?
Yeah.
Cool. Any comments, questions, or concerns? Yeah, go ahead, Charlie.
I don't know if you would know this, but I'm curious because Tertullian, who basically like created the Trinity in the mid second century, probably predates Plotinus. And so even maybe Neoplatonism really, so kind of he's like way before Augustine and stuff. So it's like I'm curious, he must have just been maybe a Platonist or something, or
Well, yeah, sure, because Middle Platonism existed way
Yeah.
before Plotinus, right? And so it's not as if like Plotinus just like rolled over one day and said, I'm going to invent this whole new
Yeah.
ontology, right? He's the first one who really systematized what was already there in Plato, right? And Plato predates all of this, right? So think of like the Timaeus and the Parmenides and the way that this is why I kind of gave you on that last slideshow that we did, that the table with all the different ways of interpreting Plato. Remember that one?
Yeah.
And the one before Neoplatonism was Plutarch, was the kind of the poster child, right, for Middle Platonism. Yeah, and so this is very much a precursor to Neoplatonism. So yeah, you're right. Tertullian, who I love, by the way, because he says his answer, and this is what the nuns should have said to me instead of beating me up, right?
Mhm.
They should have said, read your Tertullian, because he says the reason you should believe is because you don't understand. Right? I believe because it's absurd. And it's like, if you want to have faith, stop trying to use reason, right? To make room for faith. So that's the fittest, it's called the fittest move, right? Sounds like you've had a lot of philosophy of religion experience. Cool. Yeah.
I went to Bible.
Oh, okay. Awesome. So way more than me.
Yeah, that'll do
So
it.
correct me whenever I make a mistake. Cool, Trevor? Yeah, right on. So that's the idea here. Yeah, like I wanted you just to see that Augustine and Boethius and all these later, right, scholastic Christian Catholic philosophers are taking what's there in the Neoplaton Platonic, the pagan tradition, and kind of mashing it up, synthesizing it in this kind of syncretic fashion to produce Catholic theology. Is that fair enough, Trevor?
Yep.
Cool. Right. Yeah, Mitch.
In Islam, is the Prophet Muhammad regarded in the same way as Jesus Christ in terms of like the perceived divinity of him as an individual and relation to God?
No.
Is it different?
Closer to the way that maybe Jews see Moses than Christians see Jesus.
Like
Certainly-
the way Mormons see Joseph's.
I don't know about that. Yeah.
I know.
I'm not qualified to talk about Mormonism.
Do they just see Joseph Smith as like
Yeah.
just a prophet?
So
Yeah.
there is only one God. God can only be one. This is like the big thing for Islam. They're going to say that the Trinity doesn't make sense and that it's actually a kind of right wrong-headed thinking. They won't say blasphemy, right? Because that's making an extreme. But certainly it's a confused kind of theology according to Islam. Yeah, because of oneness, which we're getting ahead of ourselves and haven't talked about that. So Islam, similar to the way that early Christian, right, philosophy kind of brought in Neoplatonism, early Islam is going to do the same thing. And part of the story that we're going to be telling in this class is how those Platonic ideas first came to the East, right? And then secondly, how, right, they mixed differently with Islam than they did with Christianity or even with Judaism, because they're like Maimonides is like a Jewish Neoplatonist, right? So what was on the scene, what existed in Islam and Neoplatonism that had made them mix the way that they mixed? Cool? All right, go ahead, Jeff.
I might be completely wrong and crazy. Wasn't there like a Gnostic movement happening
yeah.
at the same time as Christianity?
Don't get me started. Right? Okay,
I'm
that's
sorry.
a whole other ball of wax, right? And you have like the Apocrypha and the Pseudepigrapha and all the councils where they decide what goes to go.
Yeah,
to the
that's
Bible
what I
and all
was
that.
thinking of.
Sure,
Oh.
right?
Yeah. Sorry.
That's another class, and I haven't even prepared that class. I'm barely prepared for this class. So, right, maybe like in 2 years I'll teach that one.
Well, then I guess to summarize what I was going to ask, would Gnosticism be an Abrahamic religion?
Oh yeah.
Or is that where it differs?
Oh no, yeah. So
They just define the God as like Plato's demiurge?
Yeah,
It's like
a-
365.
well, it depends on which Gnostic you're talking to, but yeah, that's one of the things that happens.
It's like
Yeah.
the God's there, he's just not benevolent.
Fair enough. Right. My whole point of this is to get to this last bit, right? So I've got,
Sorry, Kurt.
yeah, it's okay, right? One of the things that you would normally learn in a medieval philosophy class, so at some point I will teach you, today's going to be one of those days where I kind of touch on it, then we'll unpack it as we go, right? Especially when we get to Erugena, right? That weird Irish guy that I'm going to talk about. Yeah.
Hey, don't. I mean,
He's weird.
but he's fun. He's a fun.
Weirdness is not a negative
Well, yeah.
description.
But usually when people call
I go to Portland because it's weird. Portland,
Yeah.
I want Portland to stay weird. I want Erugena to stay weird.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Fair enough. All right. So don't walk out, Anna.
I'm
All
not.
right. Good.
You're Irish. You can say it. Don't mentally.
Natural theology is using reason to understand God's existence. Yeah. So this would be kind of like the other side of that fideist movement, where it's like just you should believe because it's absurd, right? That's like making room for faith. This would be right using reason right, to understand faith. And there's a whole like explanation for that I'm going to give you at the end of the term for why those two things can coexist. Fair enough, but just trust me for now, they fit together. Is that cool? I'm going to do a lot of hand waving today. All right, because right, we don't have that much time. I got a lot to cover. We haven't even gotten to Islam. We're still in Christianity. We're still here. All right. So among these are going to be things like the teleological argument for God's existence, which, right, Augustine gives. The cosmological argument for God's existence, which again, right, Augustine gives. The ontological argument for God's existence, which is often associated with Anselm, who comes several hundred years later, right? We're going to do a whole unit just on these three thinkers. I call it the A-team of medieval philosophy. Right? And then Thomas Aquinas, who really is the founder of scholasticism. You've probably heard that word at least once in your life, right? Gives us, right, 5 different ways, including the ones that I just talked about from these other thinkers. Cool? Fantastic. So using reason to try to prove the existence of God is one of the primary aims of natural theology. Good. So it turns out in Islam, they have a similar kind of endeavor. So it's called kalam. Right? Kalam is using reason to understand Allah. When I say Allah, you understand like that is God. We could just say God. We don't have to use the Arabic word because they believe that Allah is the same as Yahweh, is the same as, right, Patri and all of those are the same being because they're all Abrahamic religions. Cool? Cool. Dalton,
I just wanted you to write that down if you could.
which one?
Everything you just said.
Okay. Let me erase the whole which part?
There, you said.
Kalam? You want
Yeah.
to see that written down? It's going to be on one of the slides, but I'll put it here. It's KLAM.
Hey, that's what I thought.
Cool. All right. Are we ready now to talk about Islam?
Probably not.
Probably not. I do this because I wanted you to see that this is not at all alien to our own tradition. Has so many similarities to what, right, you've probably learned in some school at some point in your life, right? Our own tradition mirrors what happens in this tradition in lots of ways. Yeah, cool. One thing that I would have asked you if you had a reading quiz, so I'm just going to ask you now to talk to me about it. There are 2 things. One is in Surah, that's one of the parts of the Quran, 112. There's a concept of oneness. What do Muslims mean when they talk about the oneness of God? Right? But more importantly, probably for our purposes right now, second part of that question, who are the people of the book? In your reading, that was mentioned, right? The people of the book.
I didn't come across that in the reading.
I think it was.
No, I
Okay. Yes,
Sure.
Michael.
Well, it'd be Christian, Jews, and like a weird third thing. No one really remembers what it is.
Yeah. Okay.
Gnosticism.
So notice that, and what does Islamic law tell you should, like, if you are a Muslim, how you should treat people of the book?
There's pillars.
Yes.
You obey by you. If they are of the book, they get the pillars.
That's right. So before we even start down this path, we have a lot of contemporary political, cultural baggage that's been tacked on to this world religion that is not there at the headwaters. We're talking about the headwaters of this religion, its historical context, not any of the stuff that you're reading about in current events. Yeah,
it's dark.
it's dark.
It's dark out there.
It's really dark.
Always has been.
Yeah. So
No, I agree.
everybody with me? So people of the book count as obviously other Muslims, Christians, and Jews. And Islamic law, right, it says in the Quran, right, that people of the book should be treated well, right? So you're probably wondering, why do I keep hearing this word infidel in the news?
Because you're not of the book. Probably, or that's the idea.
So infidel means what?
Loyal.
It's actually, it comes from Latin, right? So fidelity. Your dog's name is Fido. Why?
They're so
Loyal.
loyal.
Because he's loyal, right? Yeah. So to be a fideist means somebody who believes in the power of faith. That's the word I just used. All that Fido, fidelity, fideist, it all has that FID root because it all comes down to faithfulness. So when, yes, the word infidel does appear in the Quran only a couple of times, but it means people who are non-believers of any sort. Yeah? Cool. That being said, right, now I'm ready to, I think, actually launch upon this, right, crash course in Islam. Let's start here, though. So, a chronology of major empires and dynasties of the Islamic world. One of my goals today is to try to impress upon you how diverse Islam still is, but always was. As diverse as Christianity or any other world religion, right? Buddhism, Hinduism, but there are lots of different groups and subgroups, and they don't always agree on everything. Yeah. There is no such thing as this monolithic, right? Like ideology called Islam. Doesn't exist. Cool. Don't believe me? Like I said, I went to Catholic school, but my dad was Catholic. My mom was Baptist. Right. So they got married, and basically I grew up hating myself. Right. You know how those two groups who are both Christian feel about each other, right? My mom's dad, right, made my father come to like church for a whole like year of Sundays before he'd give permission to marry my mom, right? So yeah, it's like they had to deprogram all that dirty Catholicism from my dad, I guess. I don't know. All right, so this is a big graph. You don't need to see, you don't need to know all this. I'm just trying to show you, like, look, here's the Sasanian Empire up here, right? 224 to 636. That's that third pagan Persian Empire. The one that Ctesiphon with, the arch would have been part of. The Byzantine Empire, also known as the Eastern Roman Empire, right? So the Constantinople people. Yeah. You know it is Istanbul. Okay, all right. So I'm always going to make the joke. So then you have the Umayyad Caliphate, which is really the second. The first one is just a 30-year, 29-year period of Muhammad's direct successors. 4 successors who, carried forth Muhammad's. And I realize I can turn this camera off. We don't need it anymore because I'm finished with the board. So where do I do that? Here. Cool. All right. Now you don't have to hide it.
Appreciate it.
All right, yeah, no worries. So the Umayyad, right? They take over 661, and you can see 750 because there was a revolt by Persian nobles and settlers, right, who built Baghdad as their new capital, right, on the site of a Nabatean settlement, right? That the Nabateans were the ones that Kylie was just telling us about in the presentation. Cool. So that's 30 kilometers northwest of Ctesiphon, that city that I showed you the arch from. Cool. Basically, they just didn't like how they were getting treated. They thought the Umayyads were not being very faithful. They were like
Degenerates.
yeah, they weren't staying true to their commitments. And so, right, they rose up. And what's kind of funny is that there was a Persian noble who had a pen name that he adopted. We don't know his real name. Started writing against the Umayyad Caliphate, and he called himself Abu Muslim, right? So it was like speaking for all of Muslims, right? Yeah. And basically went on this like rant, right, writing all these things and created this revolt. And so the Abbasid Caliphate, and you can also say Abbasid if you like, tomato, right? 750 to 1258. But you could see that the Umayyad still exists. It just exists in Andalusia and North Africa. So Spain and North Africa, right? For another 300 years almost. So there were the Umayyads and the Abbasids working now they didn't always get along. In fact, they often fought. But guess who they fought with more than they fought with each other? The Christians, especially to the north in France. Yeah. Because this 756 to 1031. Guess who's like right in the smack dab middle of that? Charlemagne, right? The father of Europe. So that story of like the European ego that I'm telling, right, is going to like be in this period, right? Basically smack dab in this area here, right? This on the timeline. Cool. Would you like to see the plans of Baghdad when it was first built? So maybe you can, maybe you can't. Oh, because I messed with the Zoom menu, so now I gotta click back on the. Oh, all right, multitasking is not my forte. So there it is. All right.
We did like doing those rounds.
No, so this was supposed to be like an expression of Euclidean geometry,
That's
right, in city form, right?
Yeah,
So-
super planned out.
Yeah, one of the most, right, like one of the most like planned out urban developments ever, yeah. These city planners drew up these plans because there was just this village of Nabateans there, right? And the new Abbasid caliphs, so the word in Arabic is khalifa, right? The Latin is caliph, right? So you can use either one, right? So you're thinking, you hip hop heads are thinking like Wiz, right? Black and yellow, black and yellow. Okay, I know the song gets stuck in my head too. All right, so this round city is supposed to be an expression of like not only Euclidean geometry, but also like the achievements of Islamic learning, right? Which Euclid is not an Arab, he's a Greek, right? So already you like have this idea that there's a lot of Greek ideas coming in, right, that are being expressed, yes, in this culture. Chris.
Just a random bit of knowledge I have. At this time period, this is before Kepler, circles were considered divine.
That's right.
Yeah, it wasn't until Kepler until we started talking about ellipsis, started working out some stuff.
And it took Kepler actually most of his life to even figure that out.
Yeah.
Right, yeah. He was still trying to like figure out how all the planets could move in this perfect circular orbit, and the math didn't math. Right, yeah, right on. So circles, going back to Aristotle, right, and Neoplatonism were considered to be this kind of perfect shape because they don't have a beginning or an end. They represent kind of this eternality of time. Yeah, so you could call this, right, just the round city or the eternal city. Now you can see like now it's making a political and cultural statement, not just a geometrical one. Cool? Thanks, Chris. That helps me get to that point. Yeah, Anna.
So if the circle is like considered divine, is that why you get this notion of like sacred geometry?
Yeah, I mean, yeah.
Okay.
That goes back to Pythagoras a little bit, right? So it predates this, but absolutely like it's building on that Pythagorean idea to get to that with Aristotle's. Remember I showed you in Ancient the picture of Aristotle's view of the cosmos is like all these like Russian nesting dolls.
Yep.
Russian nesting dolls. What are they called? My troishka? Right? Yeah,
Oh.
Matryoshka. I think that's how you say it in Russian. What? Oh, yeah, those. Thank you. Yeah, right. That cosmos, right? All these
Yeah.
perfect circles all the way down to the Earth, which is called the sublunary because we're under the moon. We're the center of the cosmos. Copernicus comes along and like remembers what like some ancient Greek Samian, somebody from Samos said, right? Aristarchus, that actually the sun is the center of the solar system, and then when
But the church had already written in that
Yeah.
the earth is
Kill a
not
bunch
the
of
moon,
people because
and
of
then-
that.
Yeah, that's right. Okay, cool. Sure. All right. So, hey, can you give me 5 more minutes just to talk about Muhammad and Sunni and Shia, and then we'll take a break and we'll get into the actual philosophy stuff. Is that cool? All right. So, right. I just want to clear away a few misconceptions. Talk a little bit about the history. Then we'll take our break and we'll actually dive in earnest. All right. So, there's Muhammad's dates, right? 570 to 632. In 622 CE, this is also in the Islamic calendar, year 1, right? AH means after, right, the Hijrah. So the migration from Mecca to Medina, right? So you can see it's Hijrah in Arabic or Hijra in Latin. I'm going to try to give you often these words that you might be more familiar with in Latin. I'll give you both, right? So after his death, Abu Bakr was named Khalifa or Caliph. Which means successor or deputy, right? I say Proto-Sunni because I want you to I'm going to talk about this distinction that you've probably heard in the news, right? At least once. Say more about that. Others wanted Ali, right? So, two different relatives of Muhammad as a successor, right? So but the Sunni Shia distinction wouldn't be made for another 400 years. So that distinction that kind of defines Islam now for us is something that's tacked on, right? Like in the 11th century. We're talking 400 years after Muhammad dies. Yeah, Michael.
So it's like the Orthodox Catholic distinction, it started more out political than it evolved into theological.
Yeah, so it's a little bit theological, it's a little bit political, it's a little bit of all of that mashed up into one. It's hard to distinguish. But in our own traditions, when I say those are more proximal to us, I won't say ours, but ones like in Catholicism, for instance, there have been schisms. So you have the great schism, then you have the Western Papal Schism, you have the investiture controversy, the Gregorian revolt, all these weird splintering and disagreements within just Catholicism. That's not even counting the Protestant Reformation and all that stuff, right? And so same thing kind of happens here, right? You see 400 years later, this finally becomes a line in the sand, right, in the Islamic community. So this division grows more complex over time, right? More than just caliph succession. So I want to talk a little bit about that so you can understand that it's not just about who gets to be, right, the successor to the prophet, right? So as the caliphate expanded into North Africa, into Central Asia, so as the Umayyads gained territory, and then their successors, the Abbasids, they even extend further, right? The caliphs then had to make political legal judgments that are not covered in the Quran. Right? The Quran has 116 surahs. That's it. Right? So there were nuances that they weren't ready to cover. So they had to look to other things. One of the things that they looked to is the Sunnah. Right? These are the examples, the stories, and the sayings of Muhammad that weren't part of the Quran. The Quran is considered to be the word of God, handed to Muhammad by Jibril or Gabriel, same archangel, right? So the Sunnah, think of in Judaism, if you know something about that, there's two important texts there, right? There's the Torah and the Talmud, right? And so this is kind of similar, right? You have the Quran, which is the word of God, but then you also have, right, the Sunnah, which are the examples and sayings of Muhammad the Prophet. And the caliphs would turn, if they couldn't find an answer in the Quran, then they would turn to the Sunnah to try to answer whatever political or cultural dispute that they were trying to address. Because a caliph is both a political and a religious leader. Got that? Yeah, Mitch, is your hand up?
Yes. Is the Sunnah, was it a live document that was being evolved over time?
Yes.
Okay. Does it continue to be a live document, or is it was there a day where they?
I'm not qualified to answer that. I'm not sure.
Okay.
But I do know that some groups think that the Sunnah is larger than other groups. Some groups think that the Sunnah should be only restricted to Muhammad. Some say no, the first four caliphs, right, should be included. Others think no, maybe even other imams, which I'm going to talk about in just a second what that word means, right? Even they should have some input into what belongs in the Sunnah.
Like the Bible.
Well, yeah, I mean,
What's canon, what
yeah,
isn't,
canon,
creates different sects.
the canon is constantly being redrawn in every tradition, right? In Christianity, in Islam, in philosophy, talk about it. Yeah, cool. Michael, I think, was first, and then Chris, and then was there a hand over there too? No, okay.
This reminds me, these legal disputes over how to interpret this stuff. It doesn't sound like how Christianity does it. It sounds more like how a country and a constitution interpret how things interact with itself. and what counts as itself, especially countries like Canada or the UK where they have uncodified constitutions.
Sure, yeah, like in our modern world, we tend to think of like the separation of church and state, right? It wasn't always the case, though. That's a pretty recent development in our own history. And that is not as sharp of a distinction in modern Islam. And it certainly wasn't in historic Islam. In historic Islam, right, the political leader was the religious. Is that cool? Yeah, Chris.
Is the kind of twofold during this time, but also now, like, is the narrative that the Quran was like given, completed, like already written, or did someone have to transcribe it?
No, it was an appearance of Gabriel to Muhammad who started speaking,
And someone was
reciting
okay.
the words, right? So
Man.
it was right over the course of I don't know how long,
Yeah.
but, right? It
Because
was,
there was multiple like trips he went on
Yeah,
with
that's right.
Gabriel.
that's right.
Okay.
Cool. Yeah.
Alright, I'm not trying to ruffle any feathers here. I just want to say it's nuts to me that Judaism started because, well, Abraham heard God's voice. Christianity started in a similar fashion. Islam is now started in a similar fashion. And if you take it all the way to Mormonism, similar fashion.
How do you get information from the divine other
Than from the
revelation?
divine, yeah. And then that also sets you up on a perfect podium to be hard to argue.
Because people didn't have
But
any
then-
understanding of the
Yeah.
term.
I mean, I would say yes, but also, aren't all human belief systems kind of wonky in some way?
Yeah, like they're made up.
This is
Everything that
one
we
of my favorite things about studying the history of ideas is to see like, how strange some of these ideas are. And I'm not talking about religion now. Like I'm thinking like
Just in general.
Plato and Aristotle and Confucius and heck, the Zhuangzi, right? I mean, the Zhuangzi, I love reading the Zhuangzi because it's so freaking trippy, right? Like talking butterflies and trees and right, like yeah, and magpies, and like
Weird.
yeah, and mushrooms that are like living for 1,000 years.
That
And like
stuff
yeah,
seems normal to me now. What's wrong with me?
it's fantastic. So it doesn't bother me that it's true. Like
Mhm.
I think it's kind of groovy.
I just think it's weird that all
yeah.
these Abrahamic religions, except I don't know, is Mormonism considered Abrahamic?
No,
So,
no reason.
I'll give you one example
Thank you.
from Chinese philosophy for those of you who haven't had Chinese philosophy. So when the Jesuits arrived on the scene, right, they were trying to explain to the Chinese about their religion, and they're like, "Oh, so this thing that we wear around our necks, like this crucifix, right? So our God came to Earth, and
We killed
and
We killed him.
and people killed him, and then he was like he rose,
They said,
and the yeah
Yeah,
the
that's-
Chinese were like."
What?
You tortured your god?
Yeah.
What kind of barbarians are you? Right? Like,
for
so,
mercy.
so you can see how, like, when you're not in that belief system, how like
weird it can
it
sound.
can sound so weird. Yeah.
It's like
Eye-opening,
seeing,
thank you.
don't you tell the story as well of the person like walking into, I don't remember if it was a Catholic church or not.
Yeah, wasn't it your
see
daughter?
Jesus on the cross and being like,
That's so
Yeah.
scary.
like it's
Yeah.
that's a pretty gruesome image.
Right,
Yeah.
right. So like without the context, without the
Yeah.
history, every human belief system I think ever invented seems rather odd.
Hmm.
Cool enough?
Even
I
with
just think it's
Yeah.
crazy that
You all are like, oh, Kirby's just trying not to get fired. No, I truly believe that, right?
you
Yeah.
can't.
Go ahead, Michael.
It's like Mormonism has come up a few times. How much did Joseph Smith know about?
Oh,
It is way too similar to be coincidence.
I gotta take a break here. I'm already past what I promised, and that's not something I'm ready to talk about. Let me get through this slide, and then I promise I'll release you, okay? So,
Right.
Sunnis then are about 90% of modern Muslims, right? They believe the opinions of the ulama, right? That's the wise ones, right? In the science of literal interpretation, what's known in Arabic as ilm al-tasfir. Or the Sunnah of the Sunnah and the Quran, right? So these scholars who do this like interpretation of these holy texts, yeah. And the Imam, those who are skilled in the science of deeper interpretation. So this means not just of the literal text, but also just of situations. Yeah. Ilm al Tawil, right? Can guide, but they're fallible. Imams are to the Sunnis I think this is the most important distinction, not the line of succession. Actually, this is what I think separates modern Islam more than anything else. Shia make up about 9% of modern Muslims. They believe that the opinions of the Imam are infallible. That what the Imam says goes.
Gonna be a problem sometime.
For most of Islamic history, the Sunni Shia you probably heard Shiite.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, that's not the proper reference, right?
Still
Say
try to stay
Shia.
away from the news.
Yeah, okay, good. Yeah, don't doom scroll, right? This was a spectrum, not a division for most of Islamic history. It's really been very recent that we've seen this sharp division. Just the last few decades, yeah? Since like the 1980s.
Don't.
Oh,
Yeah.
it's not like the
Don't-
distinction was exacerbated by like Iraq war.
Oh,
Because
yeah,
that's when I
mean,
first started seeing
sure,
it,
yeah.
the distinction.
Things get, gasoline gets poured on that fire,
Yeah.
sure, in lots of ways. So Sunnis have 4 or 5 different schools of jurisprudence, what are called mazhabs, right? 4 or 5 schools, mazhabs, the school is mazhab, jurisprudence is fiqh, right? And a mazhab of Aqidah is a school of theology. So you can already see there's lots of different ways to be a Sunni even.
Mhm.
Yeah? Cool. Right? You could be a member of one mazhab of fiqh, right? And a different one, like in a different mazhab of Aqidah, right? Or vice versa. Like, so you can mix and match. It's not like they all like correspond with these categories.
Right.
Yeah.
This is
so- The Shias have 3 main mazhabs. Right? Again, 3 different ways of thinking about this. Like other world religions, Islam is a mix of different beliefs. Denomination may not be the best term, though, the way that we talk about denominations in Christianity, for instance. The academic origin story of all this is a mixture of various early local legends kind of come together to give you all these different schools, right? The traditional origin story is that in 610 CE, the revelation by Jibril, right, of the Quran in a cave to Muhammad, right? Quran literally means recitation. Let's take a break and then we'll talk about that.
So you're saying he made this religion from a cave with scrap?
That's not what I said at all.
That's what.
It's
That's not what I said.
I know.
I know. It's not Iron Man reference.
I'm just being dumb.
I like it. Okay.
I suppose.
Oh, it's just not the right word. So, American, we feel like to write that. But that would be like, yeah.
It's like how they're currently using so the childcare. Childcare clause.
Oh,
They say Somalians,
yeah.
but it's not Somalians, it's like Somalis?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's like, you know what I'm saying? So I like John Dewey, one of my favorite American philosophers, right? Right, but if somebody like said, "Oh, don't listen to Kirby, he's a Deweyite," and it makes you sound like you're like this, like entranced, like zombified follower of Dewey's doctrine, and you have no mind in your own, right? And the same kind of thing is happening here, right? Right. You shouldn't put "ite" at the end of anything because it makes it seem like you're an ideologue.
You only don't know how to
Right.
express yourself.
Look,
because
some of
all
them
your
are,
life,
but
you're not allowed to.
millions of people
Like,
are Shia,
but they're not.
right? And a small percentage of them are the ones who are like causing all the conflagration that you see in the headlines.
That's as long as you feel good.
So-
about yourself, not
So then,
confident
yeah,
about what you're gonna say about it.
is what they like refer to
Say no.
themselves as.
No.
Like, nice to get on standing back and watch your face.
It's not
That's not a good.
It's not generous
You don't tell me from.
that Western media uses to refer to folks who come from that way of thinking about stuff.
Well, it doesn't have to.
So
be
yes, it's not
expensive.
like, it's not
It really doesn't.
like a racial,
But I
slur or anything. You know, it's not that offensive, it's just a better word than
Okay.
sound like they don't have any
He's looking
It's reductionist.
It's reductionist, yeah, that's.
We're like boiling them down to just one thing.
Yeah, so I made that, I just need to update it every month.
So,
And I wanna, so, close to every other, or once every 3 weeks, I wanna have somebody come in and file.
Caliph
Trying to
is,
see like.
the lead
our
guard,
workers do,
right,
but-
ruler, success, it literally means successor,
It's like.
right, or deputies,
And
it
then-
means successor or deputy,
Maybe
right, that's what that word, that's in Arabic and that's in Latin.
either talk about.
And then the, like,
something else.
the kingdom of that person, right, what they preside over is called the caliphate.
Oh, and yeah, sometimes I saw that sometimes like.
Yes.
Successor in the house.
You got it.
And then eventually I want to get Kenny in there, about reading trans.
So I thought it was interesting how we were talking, and also with the.
Following, I'm gonna go back to my key topic.
Lectures
like,
and classes, he's just
Susie
doing all
G,
this
that's
work
what
online,
I
so
was
he can't do it.
And how like, you
I
know,
wanna
has
do a
like,
joint meeting with the.
right, how, like, they're not nominated.
Boston.
President, I was talking,
And-
it was like,
yeah, and then-
Susie and she, I was always in that way. You know, which is like very
Yeah.
interesting.
But that's the review and then in between.
We always think of all their like Sunni majority
No,
countries
this is
and
old.
then
This is
Shia majority countries.
my mom.
Uh,
Mitchell got that into the secondary, right? So it's a really old tradition that predates the clawing and inspired it. So it's any like bonus
So
Pack
the decision was.
relationship like
until
that needs to involve
like,
trust. So like people
like-
use them for business contracts,
and then
relationships,
it's not as
anything.
if-
So Mitchell
yeah,
has
it's not
one.
as if just everybody in
And
the.
you wear it facing, I wear it just like you wear a clattering.
Let's decide who.
So you wear it facing out.
Yeah.
Everything's happening here.
But
over
he
the next
brought me this one.
1,000
It's on
years,
study abroad
right?
in
Different
Munich.
groups kind of.
And then this one he
Oh,
got from.
Rise out
Yeah.
of golf the tower, they get swords, they have splinter back
Oh,
then.
yeah.
Yeah,
So it's
but this is-
but it was.
My mom got me this one.
But along the way, right?
Hey, Vanessa.
Yeah, that's what I do. Dude, it was
Yeah.
so, I thought that it was more, so.
Yeah, you did.
Like
Today?
Yeah, I doubled it.
Yeah, that's say like after that.
Yeah.
And what I understand with the, they're mostly like concentrated in.
I looked down the street, I think I had a lot, right?
It's GR kind of thing, that.
I saw like.
Right? Yeah, I think so, right? That was why we wanted to say,
Like, she was like calling out to
We
me.
are a lot.
Stuff
Just kind of directing the world.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
you haven't really done any of the major classes down there?
And so I was just. I mean, I thought for sure.
Yeah, that's a good class.
That was, I know, like,
But, oh yeah, there's. I'm not.
yeah, I'm still working on it.
I'm not
right?
serious.
I remember-
That's what's up, bro.
Gym one,
Yes, we're sitting as the
it's
bus.
you're walking like in the daycare
I like
building,
pointed out, I was like, oh, what's this? And you're saying, I have theirs.
Yeah, definitely.
Oh, yeah, and I
said,
said,
I
I
said,
said,
I said, like,
Plus, plus,
you
you
like,
can-
right, like, what's it like, plus,
Yeah.
It's
It's when it's like
about the
like,
concept, they like,
it-
and they say, no, the bus goes
Yeah.
everywhere.
I know,
This was a ball, I know.
It's one of the-
Yeah,
like,
absolutely.
they take it, right? It's like, I thought the school had law saying that's like, really constantly, but it was kind of like major local. Right.
The first, like, I didn't ever use like, because I like ran up.
It's like, like that tolerance with how much.
Yeah.
Because
I
So that's why I was
You're just like, you level
You're not really.
So anybody who's sitting up there
Yeah,
first.
it's
cannot
not
just
say,
you
yeah,
have to take contemporary
Yeah.
next
Yeah.
quarter
I just.
without studying
So
Being
narrow.
sort of like,
Yeah.
like
Well,
major
it-
issues.
it was-
You wouldn't really understand what contemporary concepts are like, right? I mean, you talk about not as how we but next later you
Traditionally, that was
definitely
like,
take.
oh, I just want to spread books by like sword,
Have
that
anything
thing, I just want to spread the sword. But actually, it's a lot more like associated with contemporary, right?
I mean, you
Because
could.
that's like, yeah.
Modern, then I had.
I'm not gonna talk about this in your it's only like Arabic name. But they have like this
Yeah.
concept, That's talked about in the
Yeah.
Quran, right?
Where-
Because,
He's so
it is
cute.
like a responsibility if you're
I
like
don't know if
around people who
Sure, I think
maybe
in my mind,
don't believe in
or
on
if
the
it's
outside, tell
reality,
them about it,
if it's
introduce
untrue,
that
I
to
don't
kind
want
of.
anybody to correct me,
like-
because it
Really?
brings a lot of people
Right, and so
But
like, for
he like,
example, you
I
had
think
people
he's a very
coming down
theatrical,
into like saying a gas
brilliant
like
person,
the
like.
emergency, it's right, let me know, I was looking at that earlier, he's kind of saying it's kind of like.
Yeah, I
And
think
that's
it's
right,
fun.
it's like,
I like how excited you are about it. I'm watching you and you're like, you're really. I mean, I know that I took honor, like I got years ago, it's the end of some yes, but I can't conjure up an image.
I didn't want to be real.
Oh, I'm
It
gonna
looks
conjure,
like,
I'm gonna
like
conjure you
regular
up in
18th century
infiltration.
Yeah.
Like,
The
look
wise
at this dude. You know,
Oh,
you know he's funny.
He had a sense of humor.
Oh yeah, you know he's funny, you know he's picking out the best brocade jacket, you
So
know,
like.
he wore pearls, I'm
the
sure of it.
General, or the standard model of particle physics, you have
He's,
three.
I think he's fun though.
Yeah.
I had to create a social media profile for him. Which
Don't-
he's still dig
No,
it.
like, oh, yeah.
But I made it really funny. He was a big time shit.
And I just started thinking about it, philosophically.
In this room.
Was it, seems like you,
I was,
like, there was a
like, where to go.
I think there might have been like David's.
Maybe I should.
Or like run into a fundamental contradiction, was absolutely right about the framework for. You need the first one to,
Mormon
uh,
questions.
I've got some more people.
you have to
Oh.
to capture.
Yeah, what's going on?
What do you
Let's fill the spaces.
What do we do? I gave him what? Maybe like a day.
Like what day do you go to church?
Sunday.
Are you calling?
I thought it used to be 4.
It used to be 2 hours and, you know, God's merciful, so it's only 2 now.
It's not on Sundays or Saturday now, right?
They've been able to drink soda. It's specifically coffee, which I have asked so many people about, and they're like, we don't know, like, it's just a test of faith. And I'm like, some of y'all across it said, kill your firstborn, you would do it. They wouldn't. I don't- Probably
It's
wouldn't,
the
but like,
minimum you need
scary.
before you lose the ability
But
to fully
it's
understand.
specifically coffee.
If you have two things
specifically
completely
black
connected,
and
it's like,
gray.
It may just
But
be,
not like
an
purple.
information. They're not great,
And so for some reason, it's like totally appropriate and fine to go to
right,
the
so
third
it's
few months.
just an
You
information.
know, Diet Pepsi at 7 AM, but not to get an 8-ounce latte. Because one of those things is definitely better for you, but that's not what the question is. The question is,
Oh, you
will
should
you
have said
me if I tell you?
Hold up.
Don't
Yeah.
stay around me.
I hear you are saying that you something.
It's not wrong.
I think I've kept
John,
it. It's
Jacob, you have your hand up. What's up?
How many credits are you lost me?
Yeah, but the first part of it was, this
This
shows up,
five.
I know it shows up everywhere. And,
Who has a question about philosophy majors?
I have one.
Oh, just you. I thought you were answering, you were asking somebody else.
I think
Oh, yeah,
about
well, I was
the,
just-
like, why.
The philosophy, the philosophy major is 45 credits, plus a capstone,
Like last stuff.
right? The capstone doesn't have to be in philosophy.
Universe didn't have.
That's it.
No.
And if you're, so, hey, everybody, if you're a philosophy minor, right, you have to take 4 classes. That's 20 credits. If you've already done that, it's only 5 more classes to get a major. And we do accept double majors. And when you are a major in philosophy, you can take your capstone in your other, right, major and count it towards us. We're not going to require one in philosophy. We try to make it really easy to play with others. Yeah, cool. Yes, Michael.
I'll say.
That's it.
And we go back and forth.
That's it. Okay.
Stop.
We're gonna get back into this. So I want to, let's start by talking about the Quran. In your reading,
And that works.
I asked you to look at a few excerpts, a few of the surahs. So as I said, the Quran means recitation. The word recite is ikra. My Arabic pronunciation is not fantastic. Forgive me. I'll do my best though. Right, so the story is that it was revealed to Muhammad by Jibril or Gabriel, if you like, believed to be inimitable. What is inimitable?
Unimitatable.
Right, not able to be imitated. This is why you will often, right, see Qurans treated as if they are works of art.
Well,
Some, I think Christians do this with their Bibles too, where they have like a Gospel covers were a major thing in medieval Christendom, right? Where they had bejeweled, right, bedazzled, right, gospel covers.
Riches and those things.
Okay, baby.
You know.
Just saying, right? So this is often why it's inimitable. It cannot be imitated. This cannot be the word of man. This is the word of God through Muhammad, is the belief. Everybody got that?
So does that mean they don't have like a King James analog? Like they wouldn't have like what's the one in the hotels?
Yeah, they don't have the
It's in the song Rocky Raccoon.
what is it? The new standard, the King
Oh, the
standard.
King.
Yeah.
They're so
Cool.
crazy.
Yeah. Michael.
Well, then how do monolithic Muslims read the Quran?
Yeah.
Like the original language is such a big deal in like the religious.
So interesting.
How do they do it?
Like do they have to learn classical Arabic?
They read it's
Hell yeah, they do.
Yeah, so in fact, you don't even have to be literate because it's a recitation.
Oral.
When you go, I wanted you to hear what it sounded like. So let me get through this and then I'll answer that question in more detail with a video.
Like
Okay.
monolingual English speakers. Like,
Yeah, so I don't know if the video is going to come through or on the recording. So those of you who will be watching this later at home, I apologize if it doesn't. So it's organized, the Quran is organized into chapters, surahs, verses, ayat, and themes, umur. Right? It's recited during prayer, right? Salah. Salah is one of the 5 pillars of Islam, which we're going to talk about in the next slide. Right? So the opening, the first of the surahs, the first chapter, right? Al-Fatiha, right? In the name of God, the gracious, the merciful, praise be to God, Lord of the worlds, the most gracious, the most merciful, master of the day of judgment. It is you we worship, and upon you we call for help. Guide us to the straight path, the path of those you have blessed, not of those against whom there is anger, nor of those who are misguided. So here is someone reciting the opening, what I just read to in English translation. Sorry, I gotta click on it. I hope it still works.
One of the most beautiful languages ever.
Yeah, Arabic is actually quite beautiful.
So beautiful.
written and spoken.
I've never heard it spoken, but I've seen like the written language. I'm kind of jealous of the script.
Yeah.
This is not working at all, so let's try.
Wish the English was written in Arabic.
That might help.
I mean, it's a foreign script. Why can't we use Arabic script?
couldn't we got in a cool alphabet?
Use the numbers.
بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين الرحمن الرحيم مالك يوم الدين إياك نعبد وإياك نستعين اهدنا الصراط المستقيم صراط الذين أنعمت عليهم غير المغضوب عليهم ولا الضالين.
Assalamu alaikum guys, how are you doing? We're in.
What's funny is that was in Boca Raton in Florida, right? Not far from where I grew up. So I don't know who those people are. I just found a video that had somebody reciting, right? I wanted you to be able to hear it because that's the way that many Muslims throughout history would have experienced the Quran, not as a written text, but as an oral text, a recitation, a singing, really, right, of the Word of God. Is that
Focus
cool?
on acoustics then within the religion?
Oh yeah, I mean,
Have you
yeah.
seen the buildings?
yeah,
If you have never been to a mosque, a masjid, right? I highly recommend just going and looking at one. Just going inside, like you don't have to go for worship. I'm not trying to convert anybody.
Are
But-
we allowed?
Oh, yeah.
Yes.
Okay, I
Right?
didn't know.
Most
But-
churches you can just go in.
I mean,
They want you there.
don't
Yeah.
go unannounced. Don't go
Well, yeah,
unannounced.
you can
But right,
contact
yeah,
and
contact and
ask,
ask.
yeah.
And not just a mosque. If you've never been to a Buddhist temple, right? You should go check one out. Yeah, if you've never been to a synagogue, you should go check one out, right? Hell, if you've never been to a cathedral, right?
St. John's Cathedral. in
Yeah,
South Hill.
you should go check one out. The architecture alone makes the trip worthwhile. It is fantastic to see the way that these ideas are expressed in, right, the built art. Yeah, cool, Michael.
I was gonna say with St. John specifically, my high school had us go on a field trip to it, just to, it was AP Euro, so like
Yeah,
architecture stuff.
yeah.
And it is legitimately amazing like how they tell the story of the religion by the architecture.
Yeah,
Like,
the
it's shaped like
stained
a
glass.
cross. So like it's shaped like a cross, and then like on the left side is the Old Testament, on the right side is the New Testament.
Yeah.
And all the stained glass tell the like you're saying
There's so much, there's so much meaning, right, put into a building
It's
like
so
that.
intentional.
Growing up in Florida, only a stone's throw from St. Augustine, Florida, right, the oldest city in the United States, right, there's all these old Spanish cathedrals there, with all this like stained glass. Tiffany of the lamp fame,
Yeah.
right? Did a lot of the stained glass in a lot of those, right? And so, right, like I'm actually gonna, like in a later slideshow towards the end of the term, I'm actually gonna show you pictures from those, right, churches that I took myself, right? So that you can kind of see the thought that's put into this, the meaning, the symbolism.
I don't know,
So-
it doesn't really have that anymore when it comes to architecture.
Yeah,
No,
yeah.
we
really
build
tell
things
the
cheap
sculpture.
and.
Anytime anybody who doesn't often raise their hand, I always call them. Yes, Sophia.
Say that the best stained glass I've ever seen is
Part of
in
the roller
the.
coaster, it's gonna hit the ground, but they're not.
Oh,
gonna
I'm super jealous.
I'm gonna tweet.
Find out.
I'm gonna
When
freak
we
out.
get to that, like segment of the corner, right, I hope that you'll like.
Well, I'm doing the Protestant chapel.
Oh,
Yeah.
fantastic. All right, cool. All right. So here are the 116 surahs, right, of the Quran. Right. You can see the ones that are yellow are the Meccan, right? So before the Hijra, yeah, that we talked about, the immigration. Right. Then you have the Medinan, right? So this first group, they focus on theology, right? Monotheism, this idea of Tawhid, the oneness of God and the day of judgment, right? The others focus on jurisprudence, right? Legal judgment, statecraft. Yeah, so this would be the first one, the one you just heard over here in the top right-hand corner, and you read this way.
Well,
Everybody see that?
Oh, bad.
Yeah.
I was
What
wrong.
did you say?
I was making fun of him earlier and I said, he said like, how do you read that? And I said, oh, left to right. And then.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, it's like manga. That's how you read it.
Yeah, so you start, I thought you said from right to left, I thought you were actually. I thought you said from right to left, yeah, I didn't catch that you said from left to right, okay, so. We talked about the succession of caliphs, right, the difference between the Shia and the Sunni. Sharia law, I didn't talk about, but you've probably heard that phrase, right? That previous slide before the break was trying to show you like, there's no such thing as like a single unified Sharia law. Right, it depends on which madhab of theology and which school of jurisprudence, right, and which like combination of those things, right, you fall into that determines what Sharia law is. So if you hear, right, somebody say, oh, well, according to Sharia law, you have to do X, Y, Z, right, you need to like stop them and say, which Sharia law are you talking about? Which school of theology, which school of jurisprudence, right? Because that is not some monolithic ideology. Is that cool? Right? A lot of this nuance just gets lost. And I feel like we're doing ourselves a disservice by not understanding the other, right? They're just like painted as this like cartoon caricature of what they actually represent, and we lose all the detail and all the nuance. Well, Michael.
I was gonna say like Saudi Arabia and Iran, like their version of Islam are like are legitimately, I'd say, incompatible with our system. But like Turkey, Oman, like they have chiller forms of Islam.
Why?
that don't. Yeah, isn't Oman like a chill? Like aren't they Sufis?
No, I was gonna say, why is it? I don't know how wise it is to frame it as their system's incompatible.
No,
with
like
ours.
the theocracy part of it.
Oh, yeah,
That's
but
the
we
thing
could
about
easily, that framing could easily be switched to our system's incompatible with theirs.
Okay, yeah, I mean, fair enough, but
Oh, okay.
I kind of took what Michael was saying, right? Like some versions of this, right, have less of a like a leap to get to like similar worldviews, right? That's fair enough. Yeah, cool. Another hand doesn't get a hurricane.
Like, it's not like a universal thing where it's like, they're all the sounds. It's like,
Yeah.
yeah, they're not.
Yeah, right on. Okay, Mitch.
Well, I'm just trying to really solidify the difference between the Shia and Sunnis in reference like the last slide, kind of how to frame this.
Yeah,
So was it imams? Was that actually what you referenced, like
Yeah.
the Shia?
see the infallibility of the imam. So what the imam says, but
Does that apply to like religious leaders in Shia and like ayatollahs and like supreme leader?
Yeah.
So their words are like coming from the God
Yeah.
rather than being something fallible?
yeah,
Okay.
right. Which makes it harder to argue with. I'll just say that, right? Like, I don't think like, that's not being rude or orientalist to say, well, it's harder to argue. Yeah.
It's just like a rhetorical Mormonism.
Yeah.
Mormonism is kind
Yeah,
of like that too.
What would be an equivalent of the imam?
Like a pope. Yeah, like a pope.
That's kind of what I'm.
That's fine. Yeah, similar enough to like make it make sense. Yeah. Vanessa and then Sophia and then Jack, you all have lots of questions. Yeah.
So like the imam and stuff, was it like one person or was it like groups of people or?
Sometimes it can be one person who is like the supreme imam, like, the one, right? But it can also be groups. So, yeah, in Catholicism, we have like the Pope and then we have the bishops, right? And it can be a similar relationship like to that. But there have been times in Islamic history when there was just one imam and everybody else was like a poser, basically. Yeah, Sophia.
What I understand, as of right now, there's multiple imams.
Yeah.
What happens if they disagree with you? People, and it's infallible,
It's a crisis.
are saying different things.
It's a real crisis. Yeah.
Is that why there's less people that are Shia? or-
Oh, I don't know about that. Maybe.
Okay.
Yeah, hey, everybody, like, I'm not an expert, right?
Okay.
I teach philosophy, right? I have an interest in this stuff and I'm sharing what I know, but there are limits to what I know. And full disclosure, I don't know if I told you this, but I almost married a woman who was Muslim, right? So we lived together for several years in grad school and we were this close. Things didn't work out, but thank goodness I met my wife and I've got a beautiful family and everything, right?
Yeah, but
So
you're just saying you've experienced it through someone
through someone who was right,
who was special to you.
yeah, that's right. So that's how I came to first learn about this nuance and this subtlety. So again, right, I'm not an expert, I guess is the other way of saying that. Cool. So let's talk. Okay, Jack, quickly. But
So
you're slowing me down, Jack.
Sorry.
Okay.
I try to rein it in.
Yeah.
The one comment on the imam's infallibility, to even to put it in the perspective of a believer, to question whether the imam would even supplement his own words in front of God's would be an insult to your own faith.
Yeah.
Because you would believe God wouldn't allow that.
Yeah.
So the imam is infallible because God is like almost going through.
Yeah.
So to have two imams contradict each other
Yeah.
would be a true crisis.
Yeah. That's what I was saying. It'd be a true crisis. And
Shattering crisis.
there have been times, right, when this has happened. I don't know what would happen today if that happened. I took it that's what you were asking.
Yeah.
Like, what would happen today? I don't know. Right? Probably war.
That's what always happens.
But in history, like I know the history way more than I know current affairs. Is that fair enough? That's what I was saying. I'm not an expert. But if you want to ask, like, what happened to the Mutazilites, right, in the 9th century, I could tell you that, right? Yeah, I'm a historian, right? So the Mutazilites we're going to talk about, actually. It turns out that that's who Al-Kindi was working for in his translation movement. Let me get through the rest of this because we haven't even gotten to the philosophy stuff, right? I'm just giving you the overview stuff. So the pillars of faith, right? Summarized in the Hadith. Oh, yeah. So I gave you the Sunnah, I gave you the Quran, and then I forgot to talk about the Hadiths, right? So the Hadiths are another, right, group of texts that are considered to be, important, instructional, right, that help the imams and formerly the caliphs, right, make decisions. Cool. So you have, right, really 3 textual traditions to draw from, right? You've got the Quran, you've got the Hadiths, and you've got the Sunnah. Cool. The Hadiths are the actual sayings. The Sunnah are, right, the examples. Cool. All right. So profession of faith. In fact, most Muslims say that this is the only thing that's required, that first pillar, right? The Shahada, right? The profession. There is only one God and Muhammad is his prophet. If you say that and you mean it, you believe it, right? You're counted, most people, most Muslims would say you're a Muslim. That's all. That's all it takes.
Profess.
You have to profess,
Okay.
right? Profession of faith, right? And believe it.
No,
not
my
just-
brain went to
right.
work.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Yeah. No, not a job. Right?
Yeah.
You don't work. You don't have to become a clergy member, right?
Yeah.
But to profess your faith, right? So, depending on how conservative, how traditional that your like school of Islam is, you might say nope, more is required to be a member of the community. But most would say that's all. That's it. Right? Daily prayers. How many?
5.
Yeah, you all know that. Okay, good. So salat. The almsgiving, right? To give to charity, right? To the people of the book who need it, right? Zakat. Fasting during Ramadan, Saum, right? And pilgrimage to Mecca, the Hajj. Only if you have the means, right? If you do not have the means to make the pilgrimage, it is not a requirement. As far as I know, again, as far as I know, in any of the schools of Islam, right? Jews and Christians referred to as people of the book, we already talked about. Shia also emphasized other ancillaries of the faith, one of the most important being Tawheed, right? Belief in the oneness of God. All Muslims believe this. It's a monotheism, right? But certain schools will really emphasize it to the point of where, right, it's the only thing that matters, or the most important thing that matters, and everything else is, right, falls way down on the list of higher of needs, right? Yeah, Michael.
I was gonna say like the Saudi version of Islam, Wahhabism, it literally translated to like Unitarian.
Yeah.
In the sense that like God is the single entity, indivisible, none of that Jesus stuff.
Yeah, yeah.
Well, I mean, Jesus
Alright.
is a prophet, but not like none of the divine Jesus stuff.
So see my note here in the bottom left-hand corner? So how oneness is interpreted, this is what I was trying to get at, whether in mystical or doctrinal terms, is a matter of great dispute, and in part helps explain modern Islamic factionalism, Sophia. So I can say at least that much. Cool. So this word though, Tawheed, the Arabic word for oneness, is at the core of both the Islamic faith and of philosophy in the Islamic world. Right? So Tawheed is the theme of Surah 112. Were I to ask you a reading question today instead of having the Kahoot, Kylie saved you from answering this question. I would have asked you, what do you think? What do you make of the oneness, right, that is discussed in Surah 112, and how does it connect up with what Al-Kindi and Al-Farabi and other Neoplatonists were thinking about? So it says this, in the name of God, this is the translation, obviously, the gracious, the merciful. Do you notice how almost all of the surahs start with that? Yeah, that's kind of the prefix. Say, he is God, the one, God, the absolute. He begets not, nor was he begotten. And there's nothing comparable to him. Okay, so, phew, all of that stuff now under our belts, we're all playing from the same deck. We can turn to philosophy, which is really what I wanted to talk about. And now we only have like 35 minutes left in the class period. But I think, was that useful? Was that helpful?
Very much.
Right? Yeah, I just feel like I need to like strip away some of the confusion and misunderstanding, right? The cultural, like maybe mistranslation that a lot of us have grown up in just from the last few decades. Cool. All right. So philosophy in Arabic is called falsafa. Right. I want to talk about its transmission from like the ancient Greek philosophy, how it was transmitted to the Arabic speaking world. Cool. Falsafa is very much a reception of Greek thought into Arabic by Muslims, Christians, and Jews working together. So important that you understand this. A lot of and Chris, you asked me a question a few class periods ago about like over romanticizing this. Yeah, it's not the case that people who were doing this work, who were doing this translation work of pagan text, collecting Greek and Chinese and Indian works and translating them into Arabic. It's not like they said, "Hey guys, let's all get along. Let's all like, hey, you Jews, hey, you Christians, and us Muslims, let's all get together, right? Sing some kumbaya around the bonfire and translate some Aristotle." That's not what happened. It just was the case that they worked alongside each other. They didn't have to like intend to cooperate because cooperation was just what they were already doing.
Something that was in the reading that kind of demystified it for me was the description and kind of like the bureaucracy around what got translated for who, and like there was a sponsor, there was a dedicated, is this a commentary, is this a summary? And then I was like, oh, okay. Because that's what I was looking for. I was like, where's the ugly part of this?
Yeah, so well, ugly, I don't know, maybe.
Yeah, I mean,
yeah,
that's a strong word.
but certainly there are ulterior motives.
Yeah.
What's the motivation, right? This isn't just like pure curiosity.
Yeah.
Although there was some of that going on.
No, yeah, I mean, yeah.
So Al-Kindi and these other like translators, they had the Kindi circle, right? These people who were their job at the Beit al-Hikmah, the House of Wisdom, was to gather texts, scientific, historical, literary, philosophical, from all over Eurasia, right, and translate them into Arabic. Not just because they liked them. It wasn't some bibliophiles like, dream come true, but rather the Caliph wanted to show that his kingdom was the pinnacle, the zenith of cultural, right, flourishing, right? It was the most cultured, the most advanced, right, the most educated culture on the planet. So there's a political motivation, right, an ulterior motive.
Soft power.
Soft power. Yeah. I can tell you're a political scientist.
Yes.
Yeah. Saw a kind of soft power, right? So Greek ideas get woven into intellectual frameworks that already exist of revealed religion, right? And Islamic theological traditions of kalam. So that's that word, Islamic natural theology. It addressed philosophical issues surrounding proofs of God's existence and divine attributes, the relation of philosophy to revelation, freedom, the nature of the intellect, the eternity of the world. I'm going to show you this infographic that I have up here in just a second and talk more about that. But let me talk about the two main periods of Islamic philosophy. So the formative period before Ibn Sina, which is what we're going to talk about in the next 30 minutes and all day Thursday, right? So during this formative period, this is Peter Adamson writing, who is one of the world's leading authorities in the English speaking world on Islamic thought. The book that I let Trevor borrow is translated by Peter Adamson on Al-Kindi. Okay, so he writes, during this formative period, the main concerns of philosophers was the main concern of philosophers was the translation and interpretation of Greek philosophical texts, especially Aristotle. Figures like Al-Kindi and Al-Farabi championed these texts and insisted that they contain truths of paramount importance for any reader, whether pagan, Christian, or Muslim. Yeah. And then the second period, right, of Islamic philosophy is the response to Ibn Sina. Right. So after, and his Latin name is Avicenna, right? So after Avicenna or after Ibn Sina, right, philosophy in the eastern heartlands of the Islamic Empire was consumed with the task of responding to him instead of Aristotle. Yeah. So Ibn Sina, who we're going to talk about all week next week, is a heavy hitter, obviously. Cool. Everybody with me so far? You look like you're formulating a question, Mitch.
Well, I don't want to.
Okay. You don't want to throw me off. All right. This video down here in the bottom left-hand corner is fantastic and does a very deep dive into Neoplatonism and Sufism especially, which is kind of the mystical branch of Islam. So every religion has its mystical wing. There are Christian mystics, there are Buddhist mystics, there are Jewish mystics, that would be Kabbalah, right? Sufism is, right, Islamic mysticism, and it's some pretty groovy stuff. I mentioned Rumi, the poet,
Yeah,
very Sufi.
I love
Yeah.
Rumi.
Cool. All right, so let's look at this then. So the journey of ideas, how Neoplatonism became Aristotle in the Arab world. Like you're like, what? Aristotle wasn't a Neoplatonist, right? Yeah. So again, Trevor, this is kind of like see how these things are all like kind of getting mashed up. That question you had earlier about Tertullian. Yeah, cool. So the origin, right? The Greek source. Neoplatonic works such as Plotinus's Aeneids and Proclus's Elements of Theology form the foundation. The transmission, right, through the Levant, right? So this area here, right? Syrian Christian scholars like Ibn Naima al-Himsi translated the original Greek text directly into Arabic. Adaptation in Baghdad. Al-Kindi circled, edited, and corrected, right, the translations to align with prevailing philosophical and theological views. So if the Caliph and other noble families are paying Al-Kindi and his, circle of translators, they're the patrons for this translation effort. He needs to make sure that it's saying the kinds of things that's gonna help them, yes, right, to understand, but also not offend them.
Yeah.
Yeah. Also, because of the factionalism I've already talked about now, there was disagreement about whether these pagan texts could actually help somebody in the Muslim community, could help believers. Maybe they were distractions at best, and at worst, right?
Shaitan.
Yeah, right. Like influences of Satan, right? Pulling you away from the straight path. And so Al-Kindi and his translators had to massage, right, the pagan texts in such a way that they fit with, right, a pretty, I'll say mainstream, a mainstream theological view in Islam. So it can appeal to the most believers possible.
Similar to like the Catholics in like the 1600s.
I mean, that's a whole nother story, but similar.
Similar, like right where it's like, how do we fit this with?
Fair
what we
enough.
have?
Yeah,
Yeah,
okay.
what they did was the Mayan
Yeah.
stuff.
I was gonna say, like, the historical narrative is generally the Greeks had the stuff, the Roman Empire fell, and then it went to the Muslims. And then the Muslims reintroduced it back to the Renaissance.
Yeah.
So I'm saying we don't have the original Aristotle, we have the.
Yeah, we do. We do
Okay,
now.
okay.
We didn't.
Okay.
Europe didn't for centuries.
So I'm saying during the Renaissance, they got the version massaged for the ruling family.
That's right. Yeah. And then slowly, a lot of these texts were discovered in either Greek or Latin, right, by archaeologists. And so most of them have been, right, confirmed, right? They're not just the telephone tag, right, Arabic retranslation into, right, Latin. Is that cool? Yeah. But you're right. There was a while there where this is the only thing that they had. Yeah. Cool. Right. But it's important for you to understand, like, this is the way that philosophy, like, it happens in this kind of weird this is why studying history and philosophy is so cool, right? Because, right, you get these weird, right, like, backdoor kind of like, influences that you wouldn't expect. I haven't even told you the story that I want to tell you in the bottom half of this infographic. But, right, what we should say is, why Aristotle? Why is Aristotle such a big deal? Already by this time, Aristotle was considered to be the philosopher. There's only one philosopher in the history of Western philosophy who ever wore that name, like simply the philosopher, and that's Aristotle. And he had it for like 1,000 years. I mean, that's a pretty big deal, right? Yeah, yeah. So not Plato, but Aristotle was considered to be, right, the most important thinker in the Arabic-speaking world. Part of that has to do with the way that those texts were transmitted. After Aristotle's death, the Peripatetics, right, the story is, I don't know how true this is, but this is the story at least, that Aristotle's students and successors, right, translated his works and proliferated them in two directions. Yeah. One went east, one went west. The ones in the west, right, were largely lost for centuries. The ones in the east were not lost because history and politics and accidents that, kept them alive and in circulation. All right. So Aristotle's a big name, a household name in places like Baghdad, places like Medina, places like Mecca in the 7th century. We're good? Cool. So here's what happens. These Neoplatonic texts, right? They have names like the theology of Aristotle. It says Aristotle, sorry, that's what happens when you ask Google Gemini and AI to translate your idea into into an infographic. So the theology of Aristotle. Guess who gave that name to that text from Plotinus? It was really parts of Plotinus's Aeneads. Plotinus's student, Porphyry, is the one who wrote down the Aeneads. These are lectures that Plotinus gave, right? Porphyry wrote them down as the Aeneads. Those Aeneads get translated by this guy, the Syrian guy, right, named Ibn Naima al-Hidusi, right, as the theology of Aristotle. Why? Right? Well, because Aristotle's a household name, right? And because those parts of the Aeneads were talking about all the circles and the nesting cosmos and like the right what is it? The understanding noesis in Arabic or in Greek. Sorry, all the languages starting to run together from Chinese, Arabic, Greek. It's hard to keep up with them. Do you see how that works? Yeah. Then the Liber de Causis, right? This is actually from Proclus. I need to move my little image here. So this was right the works of another Neoplatonist, right? Proclus, that get translated and get attributed to Aristotle. Why? Because it's the parts of Proclus that are talking about things that Aristotle had already talked about in the metaphysics. So again, Aristotle was a big name. So this is an easy way to get these texts to kind of, but for the Muslim translators, they didn't see this as kind of like, they didn't see this as a problem at all. Because Platonism and Aristotelianism were not seen as different philosophies. They were seen as, right, components of a single way of thinking about the world. Right? The Greek pagan philosophy. And again, going to oneness, right? Truth is truth, is the argument. And yes, these pagans may not have had the benefit of, right, the revealed recitation, right, of Jibril, but they did, if there's anything true, then they're worth saving. Right? There's only one truth. And different peoples of the book might point to the truth in their own imperfect ways. Does that make sense? Can I give you a story to help, kind of a metaphor and a poem, right? To kind of help you drive this point home. So the story is of the 6 blind men and the elephant. You heard this one?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, right. So John Godfrey Saxe, a British poet, wrote a famous poem about it called The 6 Blind Men of Hindustan, right? So these 6 men, right, they're all blind. They hear an elephant's coming to town. They want to go, right, see the elephant, right? But of course, when they see, they have to lay hands upon anything to see it. So they all go and they touch the elephant. But their hands, because there's 6 of them, the elephant's so large, their hands all fall upon different parts of the elephant. Yeah. So one touches the ear and says, "Oh, an elephant's very much like a leaf." One touches the tusk and says, "Oh, an elephant's very much like a sword." One touches the trunk and says, "Oh, an elephant's very much like a snake." Right? The tail, "Oh, right, an elephant's very much like a rope." The side, "Oh, it's very much like a wall." Right? The leg, "Oh, it's very much like a tree trunk." Yeah. Now, John Godfrey Saxe says, which of these men were right? Well, they were all partly in the right and mostly in the wrong. And he uses that as kind of a way to think about religion. And this is very much in the spirit of what Al-Kindi and Al-Quran and others translating texts, pagan texts, right, in the Beit al-Hikmah would have thought about truth, right? That truth is one, and every human, attempt at pointing at the truth is imperfect.
So they approached it consciously accounting for that.
That's right.
Hey, that's not.
So let's work with what we have, massage it so that it fits with what is closest to the truth. In fact, what is inimitable, right? Which is God's word itself, the Quran. So you can see for them, this wasn't like some kind of weird problem, right? Of misattribution. This was like taking the ideas of Plato and Aristotle, whoever wrote them, right? And fitting them into, right, what they already held dear. Cool. Several hands. Mitch first and then Michael.
Would you say the perceived openness of Islam at the time to be willing to at least entertain these texts was more pronounced than it was in Christianity? Do you think there were precedents among Christians?
I think that's not a simple question to answer. There were places, right, in both traditions and groups in both traditions that were either open or completely rejected. Yeah. Part of what Kindi was having to do in massaging this was to avoid the censors, right? Those more traditional readers who would have thought that what he was doing was tantamount to like infidelity, right? Creating infidels. Yeah. So a lot of this effort is public relations, not just for the caliph who is the patron, but also, right, for the texts themselves to be considered as candidates for truth. Is that cool? Yeah. Got that? Yeah, Michael.
I was gonna say, this sounds like the earliest seeds of the Baha'i religion.
Yeah, Baha'i is an offshoot of Islam.
Cause like those guys set up shop every once in a while and hand out pamphlets.
Yeah. Look, I can't
That's how I
speak
know about it.
intelligently on the Baha'i. All that I know is that it has its origins in Islam. Yeah. Beyond that, yeah.
Cause when the guy talked to me, he was like, we believe the Christian, like Jesus, the Buddha, all these guys were basically prophets of their era.
Yeah.
And were able to do the Hindu.
There was a
thing.
guy who used to teach here who was Baha'i, and I never did talk to him about it, and I should have. That was a missed opportunity. Yeah, so this repackaging for a new audience, right? Philosophical alterations made. The one of Neoplatonism obviously becomes, right, creator God, right? Neoplatonic concept redescribed for authority, right? Pure actuality is added to them. The Neoplatonic concept of the one was redescribed as a creator God, and Aristotelian terms like pure actuality were added to this. All right, so then here are those Islamic Platonists and Neoplatonists. Al-Kindi, who we're going to talk about in the 15 minutes that we have remaining. And then obviously in earnest on Thursday, we're just going to talk about these two guys and tie it into the city of God, right? So political philosophy, right? And then next week, we're going to look at Ibn Sina or Avicenna, if you want to use his Latin name. Cool. Right? But if you really wanted to do a deep dive, what that video that I showed you starts to do, right? You would want to I would highly recommend reading Ibn Arabi. Let's see, Averroes. If they have a Latinized name, you know they're important, right? So Ibn Rushd is his Arabic name. Let's see, another one that's really important here. Let's see, yeah, Razis and Al-Razi. Yeah, if you really want to, Al too, absolutely, right? So some really cool ideas. Some of these are also kind of Sufi, right? In their leanings, Ibn Arabi, for instance, right? So some really cool stuff to look at. Yes, Kylie.
Quick question, is the Brotherhood of Purity like a group writing?
Yeah. It's like a philosophical circle.
Okay.
Right, cool. Yeah. Oh.
That was my question, too.
Yeah, okay. You saw that and you're like, wait a minute, that's not a single name, right? Yeah, cool. All right. How about in the 14 minutes that remain, I just give you kind of a quick crash course on what Kindi's project is, and then we'll talk about the details on Thursday. Cool?
Agreed.
All right, fantastic. All right, so Kindi, known as the philosopher of the Arabs, right? He's the first to make explicit use of Greek philosophy while writing in Arabic. He couldn't read Greek himself, right? So he was depending on Christians and Jews in his circle to help him with these translations. I put up here in his biography that he's descended from a noble Arab tribe. This was pretty unusual at the time. Later, it becomes less unusual. So you can see under the image, he was in charge of the translation at the Beit Hikmah, the House of Wisdom, which housed translated works from ancient Greece, Persia, and India. Inset is a page depicting a design for a self-trimming lamp, right? So, like the camping
wick.
lamps that you used to use, the Coleman lamps with the wick, right? You have to trim the wick. You have to, in other words, not clipping it, but you're actually you have to turn the dial so that it gets longer as it burns down. This one actually would do it automatically.
That's really cool.
Which is really cool, right? They had that way back, right?
Great
1500
idea.
years ago. All right, so the influences on Kindi are Aristotle's metaphysics, that's understanding. This is, those of you who haven't had ancient, this is the text where Aristotle gives us both his cosmology and his theology, right? So the God of the philosophers. God is pure intellection, understanding what it is to understand, understanding itself, right? This very kind of reflexive, non-anthropomorphic view. Yeah. Neoplatonism of Plotinus, which I just gave you in the infographic. John Philoponus gives us this view of impetus or impulse, right? Trevor, you seem to be knowledgeable of this. Do you know John Philoponus? Okay, cool. Maybe I'll bring in something about him later when we get to that topic. Obviously Euclid and mathematics, and then you can see over here on the right all the Mutazila theology. So the Mutazilas were a sect of Muslims who thought that reason and free will and divine justice, right, were all essential to understanding like true faith in Islam. Yeah. The caliph that was paying Kindi and his group of translators, he was a Mutazila. Yeah. I have here in intermediacy. One of the things that sets Mutazilites apart from other factions of Islam of the day was that they believed that the gravest sins, if someone if a believer committed a grave sin, right, they were still part of the community, but they were intermediate. They were not a believer, but they weren't an infidel. They weren't an unfaithful. Other groups of the day thought that if you committed a sin, right? This is why like the jurisprudence stuff that you all thought I was just like talking about law. No, this is absolutely like fundamental to like who counts as a Muslim, right? Other groups would say, nope, once you commit a crime, you're banished, you're out, right? You're unclean. Yeah, Michael.
So kind of like how I've had some Catholics explaining excommunication to me, like a spiritual therapy type deal.
Yeah, something like that, right? The closing of the book, snuffing out the candle, and ringing the bell, right? It's a harsh ceremony. So the person comes up in front of the entire, congregation, and they close the book. The word of God is now off limits to you, right? They ring the bell to alert St. Peter, you shall not pass, right? And then they snuff out the candle, right? To symbolize that you're like the light of your soul has been extinguished.
Wow.
I see why
Super harsh.
Don't show up to that,
Yeah,
right?
yeah. So
Don't show up to that.
The Mutazilites, right? And now you might be thinking to yourself, the Mutazilites sound like they're pretty progressive. They're kind of groovy. Not always. They had their own inquisition. They wanted to convert everybody to their way of seeing things, and it got kind of bloody, right? So, right, see what I mean, Sophia? I can tell you this history. I know this story. All right, so there aren't in life, in history and in life, there aren't any good guys and bad guys. There are just people. Okay. And people make mistakes. Sometimes big mistakes. Yeah, okay. So the metaphysics that Al-Kindi is talking about in his works are understood narrowly as philosophical theology, a science he identifies with the study of God as a first cause. Now we're ready to talk about natural theology. So, yeah, the Kalam cosmological argument. I left it up there for a reason. Fantastic.
We finally got there.
All right, so let's start with just the cosmological argument from the Christian tradition, because you might be more familiar with that. And then I'll talk about how the Kalam is different because it sets up Kindi's metaphysics, and we have 8 minutes. So everything that exists, for something to exist, something must have a cause. Why? Because ex nihilo nihil fit. Do you know that Latin phrase? From nothing, nothing ever came. Right? So you can't have something from nothing. So since the universe exists, it must have a cause, right? And that cause is God. That's kind of like the quick and back of the napkin sketch of the cosmological argument. Now, every kindergartner that you present that to will then come up and say, what? What's the question they ask? Everything has a cause. The universe, everything that exists has a cause, right? Yeah. What caused? God, right? That's the question. So the Kalam cosmological argument says everything that exists in time has a cause.
Oh, that's clever.
Yeah.
God doesn't exist.
God does not exist in time. God is not a being, like a person, right? God is this, like, is not a man, is oneness. And this is something that Islam and Judaism both agree on, that Christianity interprets differently, that God could be a man. Yeah. I don't want to get into the weeds on that, but some of the stoning that happens of Jesus in the Bible probably is like a misunderstanding like of that, right? But that's a story for another time. All right. I need to think about how I'm going to say that so that I don't get an angry letter. All right. So this, what was I saying? I forget what I was saying. Kalam cosmological argument. Yeah, thank you. Okay, so Kindi, right? So let's go back to Aristotle. The circle is the perfect shape. Aristotle says all motion in the universe has to be circular, right? Cyclical. This is the circle of life that we talked about, right? From potentiality to actuality, then back to potentiality. The acorn grows up into the oak tree, then it drops more acorns, and then they become oak trees, and then the cycle continues. You remember that whole story we told in Ancient when we talked about Aristotle? You don't remember, but lots of the people do. All right. So that kind of circular motion. So Aristotle says time must be infinite, right? Because it doesn't make sense to say, right, if time was finite, what came before time?
There was no time.
Right? Like, right? Aristotle says that doesn't make sense. And Big Bang and singularity doesn't.
Yeah.
Right. Like how many Planck times are
I don't
yeah,
get
yeah,
any
okay.
of that
Yeah.
stuff.
All right. So for him, time just must be infinite because it doesn't make sense. It's nonsensical to say something came before time.
Makes sense.
Right? So for him, right, the cosmological argument, it's not that big of a deal. Yeah. So you would just say the unmoved mover is, right, sui generis. Right? What is sui generis in Latin? Self-caused. Right? So
Self-generated.
right, yeah, self-generated, yeah. So understanding causes all that motion, and because it's not a being, it's just pure intellection, it's a verb more than a noun, it's not a big deal. Right? Suddenly, right, when you have revealed religion, you have monotheism, there is only one God, and Muhammad is his prophet, you can't say that. You definitely can't say that, right? So, right, the Kalam solution to this is to say only those things that exist in time, right, have causes. God exists outside of time, so God doesn't need a cause. Yeah. But time, then, for Kindi, is finite. That's like the the metaphysical upshot of this. Time is finite,
In which direction?
from the beginning. So there was a creation.
Okay.
Makes sense, right? This is like the whole point of like bringing all this pagan stuff in is to support, right, Islamic theology. So the creator God. And the argument he gives is actually pretty ingenious. He says it has to be finite because if an infinite amount of time had passed, we wouldn't have been able to be here. Because an infinite number, right, can't be parsed. Right?
Oh, it's but the
It's
arrow
enough.
thing.
Yeah.
In
It's like Zeno's paradoxes. So he leans on Zeno, right, to make this argument to turn Aristotle's metaphysics into something that actually can work with, right, with Islam.
So interesting.
It's very interesting. Whether you buy it or not, I don't care, right? I'm just telling the story, right?
It's a good narrative.
Yeah. All right. So he closely associates being with truth. So that's that idea of the elephant that I gave you, right? Everything that has being has truth. If it's written down, it has some truth that you can extract from it. Yeah. To say that God is the cause of all truth is to say that God is the cause of all being. Al-Kindi argues for a first cause of being precisely by arguing for a first cause of oneness and asserting that bringing something to be means imposing unity of a certain kind. So this is a really important idea that's going to be relevant in Dr. Decker's class when you get to, who's in Dr. Decker's class right now? When you get to Leibniz and other thinkers like that, God the sustainer.
What class is it?
Modern philosophy. Yeah.
Oh, I already
Right. So a lot of the moderns will take up this idea. They read, right, these guys, especially Ibn Sina, maybe not Al-Kindi, but Ibn Sina read Al-Farabi and Al-Kindi and used it. And so Ibn Rushd and Ibn Sina become important Arabic sources for modern philosophers like Descartes, like Leibniz, like Pascal, right? Yeah, we got 2 minutes, right? So this idea of God the sustainer means that the oneness of God, the emanation of the creator God is constantly keeping things going. Think of like, you know, the old vaudeville acts where the guys would spin the plates on the stage, right? You'd have to like, right, spin, and then one would start to, right? So, right, imagine the entire cosmos in that way, but God is the one who doesn't have to run around the stage, he just makes it all happen.
But it's implicit that he's actively keeping it going.
Yeah,
Okay.
but not by,
No,
yeah, but
Yeah.
by
existence.
the
But-
active intellect, the active intellect of Aristotle, right, understood in this kind of Neoplatonic way, this emanation, right, making the world soul, right, function. The wellspring keeps the water pumping, right, just by being. Cool. Phew. So all of this is to lead to psychology, epistemology, and ethics. The soul is immaterial. It has 3 powers, as Plato said, with the chief part being reason. Right? Kindi inaugurated a long tradition in which Muslim philosophers explain human knowledge in terms of a superhuman separate intellect. The idea is that human minds start with only potential knowledge and are illuminated by the first intellect, later called the active intellect, which is the thing I just said. So your job as a human being is to, right, not fall prey to the weaknesses of the flesh, but to try to learn, to educate oneself, to ascend towards, right, in the direction of the one. Can't arrive at the one because it's in apophatic darkness, right? But
It'd be the 2.
you can ascend into, right, this higher level. This is both a moral and an epistemological mission. Learning knowledge and building character at the same time. Cool. It's time to go, so Jack.
I have a question for after this, so I guess.
Okay, thanks everybody for your attention. I'm sorry I went over. Thank you for the negative minute. I'll see you all on Thursday. We'll talk more about this in Al-Farabi.
Before you take off, I just have a quick question.
Yeah, let me stop the recording.
Okay. It's a definition thing, or not a definition of the.
Was it